Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over whether or not Western Alliance Bank is one of the best high yield savings accounts out there. And one thing I want to be acknowledging here is that I changed my mind on this specific organization. A couple of weeks ago, my family and I were having a conversation, we're having dinner, and it was July 4th. So we are having a lot of fun, and then we start talking about high yield savings accounts and investments. And my wife's sister had this reaction when we started talking about high yield savings account. And she goes, "Oh yeah, I've been using Western Alliance Bank. It's such a great bank. I love it." And it started making me reconsider my position that I had a couple of months ago when I first reviewed this bank and read reviews from people that used this organization. So in today's video, my goal is to give you the tools and information that you need in order for you to make the best decision for yourself and determine whether or not Western Alliance Bank is an organization for you. Okay, so we're gonna go over the interest rates and we're gonna go over a bunch of other parameters that you need to know. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna give you how I personally now feel about this organization with respect to the branding, the warm and fuzzy feeling of confidence, confident familiarity, because I believe it's very, very important. Don't forget to check the link in the description where I put together a free resource that you can use, the high yield savings account guide to passive income. And you can learn everything you need to know about high yield savings accounts so you can choose the best organization for you. Okay, so we're going to start here with the competitive, whether or not it has a competitive interest rate, and it's absolutely one of the highest ones that I've seen so far, and still one of the highest. So currently it's at 5.31 and used to be at 5.36. Now, one thing that I'm going to be mentioning here is that the Federal Reserve has been making some moves with respect to potentially cutting interest rates in September. I've seen some reports that may take place. So you are going to be seeing in the next couple of months the interest rates on these high yield savings accounts eventually starting to go down. Now, this has to do with the fact that these high yield savings accounts interest rates do depend on the Federal Reserve interest rates themselves. For example, a few years ago when the Federal Reserve interest rates were low, Marcus by Goldman Sachs, which is the organization that I personally bank with, was offering 1.1 or 1.4%, which at the time was one of the highest ones available. But that right there tells you that the interest rates on these high yield savings accounts are going to go up or down. And that's just the nature of the beast. It's one of the cons actually of high yield savings accounts. But at the end of the day, it still offers a much higher interest rate than most other banks out there. Now, with that being said, does it mean that you should just forget about high yield savings accounts and just not put your emergency fund in these organizations? Personally, I think it's still the best way. And even if they go down a little bit, it's not like they're just going to drop, or at least that's my personal estimation. It's not like they're just going to drop exponentially. They are going to start tapering down and eventually probably they'll go back up depending on how the economy it's doing. Okay, so with respect to bonuses for when it comes to new clients, so maybe you are somebody that is looking now for a high yield savings account, maybe you're looking to open a new account with a new organization. So currently I haven't found a bonus. What some banks out there offer, they offer referral bonuses for a certain periods of time. For example, SoFi is one of the ones that's been offering consistently over $300. Of course, there are certain requirements that you need to meet with that organization in order to get that bonus. But for now, Western Alliance Bank is not offering anything like that. So if you bank with them and you are aware of some offers, please let us know and put it in the comments below. Okay, so now with respect to zero monthly fees, absolutely this bank meets that requirement. And it's really good because obviously you don't want an account to start eating up on your savings. Like there are some banks out there that not only do they charge you to use your savings account to store your money, they also give you a very crappy interest rate. So we got to be aware about those and don't just waste your money that way. Now, when it comes to minimum deposit required to open the account, Western Alliance Bank has a $500 minimum. And then in order to maintain your account, you need essentially a penny to keep your account open. It's very attainable, I want to say, for most people. And if you have a $500, you can get started with Western Alliance Bank. Now, one of the most important features when it comes to these organizations is the FDIC insurance, which I talked about plenty here in the channel. And there are ways that you can increase your FDIC insurance, especially if you have beneficiaries, if you have a joint account, maybe you have a spouse, you have a family, or maybe you want to add a trust to your portfolio, or not to portfolio, but to your financial planning, then in that case, your FDIC insurance can be taken all the way up to 1.25 million. I believe that's the latest research that I found. And that's as long as you add beneficiaries to your account. Now, for most organizations, it is very simple to add beneficiaries. They just give you a form that you can fill out online. You put in their information, and that's about it, especially if there are minors. So I'm gonna suggest here that if you wanna look into that a little further, if you don't find those options on the website itself, I suggest that you call customer service to see how they can help you out with that. But at the end of the day, the FDIC insurance is $250,000, which is very much standard, and at least personally, the minimum that I look for. Now, when it comes to easy access and transfer of your money, they do take up to 5 business days to transfer your money from Western Alliance Bank to another organization. Sometimes, especially when your account is open, or when your account is new, these organizations take a little longer for you to just verify your transactions, verify your profile, making sure that you are the one that owns the savings account and also the recipient account. And that way you don't get scammed out of your money. What I've seen a lot of people complain and talk about is how when they first open their account, they make a deposit and then they try to make a withdrawal from their account onto a third-party organization, and the bank sometimes locks them out of their account. Sometimes they can't access their funds. So what I suggest here is that if you're going to be making a bunch of transactions after you open your high-yield savings account, call the bank, talk to them. Hopefully you can mitigate the risk of them locking you out of account, because a lot of the times these reactions and these lockings of accounts are automatic. These are certain parts of the algorithm and the system that is automatic. And if they see a transaction that doesn't meet quote unquote standard daily practices, then they automatically flag your account. And in order for you to access your money again, then you need to call customer service and hopefully you get it resolved. So that's what I suggest you do there if you need your money a little sooner, or if you, of course, are going to be making a bunch of transactions, hopefully not shady transactions in your account. All right, so when it comes to depositing money, you do make deposits through a bank transfer. Checks and wires are not allowed. And quite honestly, this is something that shocked me a little bit when checks and wires. Wires are very, very common. Checks, not so much anymore. In fact, I was reading a report on how checking accounts or checks themselves may start to go away. And it's an interesting fact that you probably didn't know. So no check deposit with Western Alliance Bank. And if that's your thing, if you still are using checks and that's how you do your thing and you all the banking, certainly my dad still writes checks and goes to the bank and makes his deposits and pays his credit cards. But if you still into that, there are other banks out there that do offer check deposits. Like most other banks out there still offer them. Like I don't know why Western Alliance Bank doesn't really, maybe it just adds another cost that based on their customer clientele, the target audience, they really don't need to have. But hey, there's always, that's why you have a menu, right? There's like different people like different things, and businesses also like to deal with different target audiences themselves. Okay, so now when it comes to withdrawal limits, the withdrawal limit per month, and this is not with respect to amount, but with respect to how many withdrawals you can make per month, is no limit. There's no limit. Usually, there used to be a limit of 6 withdrawals per month for savings accounts up until 2020. But because what happened back then, the Federal Reserve said essentially, okay, banks, you go ahead and do your thing. We won't have you have limits on your customers. So now, of course, it's up to banks to determine how often they allow their clients or their customers to take money out. Now, with respect to easy access to your money, it's very, of course, you just easy access to transfer to your money. They do have a good interface, it's simple to use. That's what I've seen based on the research that I've done. And something that is very important in my personal opinion, they do have human customer service. What I've noticed with some fintechs and some neobanks out there, they start incorporating robo customer service a lot more, where you essentially are chatting and talking to artificial intelligence, and then hopefully at some point you get to talk to a human. Now, if an organization offers human customer service, in my personal opinion, it's certainly a plus. All right, so now if you're interested about what people are saying about this organization, Wallet Hub offers a 3.2 out of 5. I'm also going to be posting what NerdWallet also say about this organization. And when it comes to being established brand, so this organization, believe it or not, was founded back in 1994. Even though personally, I've only heard about this organization within the last 12 months, they've been in business for a long time, and it's taken them a long time, at least in my eyes, for myself, a while for me to hear about them. And if it wasn't for high yield savings accounts and you guys making comments and letting me know about these new organizations and their offerings, probably I would have never actually learned about them. All right, so now let's get into a section of the video here where I'm going to be giving you a little bit more insight into frequently asked questions that I see and that I get. And one of them is, hey, Alex, how long would these high yield savings accounts rate stay this high? And if you paid attention to the beginning of the video, I mentioned that, of course, these high yield savings accounts will go up or down depending on what the Federal Reserve is doing. Let's take a look at this report right now and see what the Federal Reserve is planning on doing.
Streets that we've got coming out. Allie.
Now, Brad, the narrative has certainly shifted when it comes to just how much the Fed will cut rates in September, but markets and economists do expect some form of a cut by the end of that meeting. So let's take a step back and talk about what all of this means for you. As we know, interest rates have remained elevated as the Fed works to bring inflation back down to its 2% annual target. The thesis there being that if rates are high, consumers won't spend or borrow as much money. But here's the problem. There have been some areas of the economy that have just remained super sticky despite these high rates. In other words, prices just haven't come down. All this to say, we should expect some form of relief soon, as lower interest rates means borrowing costs will be cheaper, and that's something that many Americans are certainly looking forward to.
Now, with that being said, another frequently asked question that I personally get is, hey, Alex, what happens if Western Alliance Bank fails? How do I get my money back? The first thing that I'm going to be saying here is that I hope that this never happens to you. Certainly it's happened to a lot of people, and recently it's been almost unbeknownst to us, or something that's been happening quite frequently with some banks. Silicon Valley Bank comes to mind. Something that happened with Yada. It wasn't really a bank failure, but it involved a lot of people not being able to access their accounts, but that was for different reasons. So if a bank fails, and this is key right here, if Western Alliance Bank fails, Western Alliance is a bank, so if it fails, it usually is bought by another bank and your account will just transfer. But if no one buys the bank, the FDIC will step in and write you a check within a couple of business days. So essentially, that is the plan. That is the overall big picture of what happens. Of course, when the rubber meets the road, there's usually a little bit of friction and you may run into a couple of issues here and there. But usually these transitions are fairly smooth. When a few years ago, when I used to work at a bank, I used to be a supervisor, and the bank that I used to work for got bought out by another bank called Toronto Dominion, TD Bank. You may have heard of it. And the transition to that bigger bank was a little rocky for a lot of customers because they didn't know what to expect. Usually what people tell you is, oh, you know, nothing will change. Just the name is changing. Things will remain the same. The customer service, the people that you see here are going to be the same. When in reality, the truth is a lot is going to change. So hopefully nothing or this never happens to you, but if it does, now you know what to expect. Now, another frequently asked question that I get is, hey, Alex, what happens if I need to withdraw money for a big purchase or a down payment? Now, here's what I'm going to say to this. Sometimes banks do take longer when you need to withdraw large amounts of money, or maybe you are out of the country, or maybe they see something that is outside of the regular business practices. Let's say that you on average withdraw $1,000, $2,000. If all of a sudden you have a withdrawal that is $50,000 or $70,000, the bank itself is going to flag you. And in order to avoid this, I provide here a few mitigations. For example, being aware of the withdrawal limits per day that the bank offers, also transferring ahead of time if you can help it, and most importantly, calling customer service ahead of time to let them know about the transactions or the situation in which you'll be doing your banking. Maybe if you're going to be out of the country, maybe you are going to be wiring money to a third party or overseas organization, or maybe you're buying something online that it's not in the United States. So just make sure, take your precautions, and if something is going to fall out of alignment with what you usually do, then I would definitely communicate with the bank and call them before making transactions out of the ordinary. So that's my personal 2 cents when it comes to avoiding these money withdrawals that end up taking too long or may end up even locking you out of your account. Now, another frequently asked question that I get is, Alex, how can I maximize my savings? How can I save money? And a really quick tip that I'm going to be mentioning here is a Warren Buffett quote comes to mind, which is, before you spend your money, make sure that you save it first. And in order to save it first, personally, one life-changing trick when it comes to finances that my wife and I have started implementing a few months ago, actually, we started automating our finances in our savings account and our savings. So when we get paid, automatically we send money to our bank, and that just starts piling up the money because we're saving for a house. So our emergency fund, it's in different banks, different organizations. So we have a system that we follow, and we do that automatically. So that's honestly, in my personal experience, what's worked for us, the best way to handle our finances when you start automating a bunch of these little deposits in different accounts. So that way you don't have to think about it, because when you have to think about it, the more friction you put in a certain process, the more steps a process has, then the less likely it is to happen. And also the more roadblocks you are going to face, the more things that can go wrong. As Elon Musk, one thing he said, I remember I was watching a video, the podcast for him, he said, the best process is no process, right? So let that sink in for a second. Okay, so now with all this being said, here are the pros and cons that I've personally identified with Western Alliance Bank. This interest right here is 5.31%. I updated it. I just needed to update it here on the screen. There's also no monthly fees. There's unlimited transfer limits, no minimum balance, and the FDIC insurance of $250K. You do need, as a con, you need $500 minimum deposit, which is required to open. There's no new account bonus. Now, this is going to depend on whether or not this matters to you. I've gotten comments in my videos telling me why I'm not opening a bank account if the bank doesn't offer a bonus, that I'm leaving money on the table because I want a bonus and I should grow up and whatever, man. Personal finance is personal. So if you are okay with no account bonus and you don't want to leverage your new relationship with an organization, it's up to you. You know, everybody has got their own preferences. Also, another con that I personally noticed with Western Alliance Bank is the fact that there's no wires or checks accepted, no ATM access, and the only way that you can access your money is through bank transfers. There's also no branch, online only, and it could take up to 5 business days to transfer window, estimated, of course. So now, is this an organization that I would recommend to my mom? And now, honestly, now that I have a family member that banks with this organization, and it's almost like somebody's vouching for this organization, right? And of course, I trust my wife's sister, and she's had a great experience. And I'm sure that there are some people and there are some customers that just have terrible experiences, that they don't trust them. It happens with any bank out there. It happens with the organization that I bank with. It happens with American Express. It happens with the biggest names, Capital One. There's always satisfied and unsatisfied customers. The key is to make the decision and discern and be able to sort out what is actually applicable to us. So now, this is an organization now that I would definitely recommend, maybe not definitely, but I would be more likely to recommend to my mom if there weren't any options available, especially if she's looking for a high competitive APY, if she's looking for basic savings, a way to just set and forget her money. And also, one thing that you may have not known about Western Alliance Bank, it's that it's a small business focused bank. So when you go to the website, they're going to have services for small businesses. So maybe if you have a small business and you also are looking for small business products and financial services, then maybe Western Alliance Bank could be a great little hub for you where you can keep everything, your business stuff, as well as your personal high yield savings account. Just make sure you don't mix them, because when it comes down to taxes, you're gonna find yourself in a lot of trouble. So trust me, I've been there. So no, if my mom were looking for example, a motivating bonus, maybe $200, $300, maybe an extra 1%, 0.5%, like some other organizations out there offer. Also, if my mom is looking for a checking account for ATM, maybe she's looking to invest, Maybe she's looking for a physical hub, maybe where she can do all her banking purposes, or maybe she wants to do wire transfers if that's part of her thing, if that's part of what she does. Maybe she wants to write checks, or maybe she's just looking also for physical branches. One thing that I always bring to the attention of people that are looking for these organizations is, hey, if you are not quite ready to bank online, that's okay. There are still some banks with physical locations that do happen to offer these very much high interest rates on these high yield savings accounts. One example that always comes to mind and that I say here, it's Capital One 360. It's an organization that I've been banking with for the last 15 years or so. Capital One, I recently opened for research purposes to Capital One 360, and it's very simple to use. It's very straightforward, and it's a really good savings account. I will give that one a thumbs up as well. So that's what I would do. By the way, if you are a busy professional, if you're a parent and you are a beginner in personal finance and you are trying to organize your finances and plan for the future and achieve financial security and safety for you and your family, click the link in the description where we can have a one-on-one free 30-minute discovery call where I can learn more about your challenges and I can give you insight and tips based on my personal experience and potentially work together. What do you think about Western Alliance Bank? If this is an organization for you, I would love to know your comments and I would love to know your insight. And if you've been with this organization for a while, let me know in the comments. If you want to learn more about high yield savings accounts, don't forget to download your free passive income guide with high yield savings accounts. With that being said, guys, thank you for being here and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.